Okay, let's get into this. Forget the official org charts for a second and just uh, picture Philadelphia, New Year's. It's absolute chaos, right?
Oh, definitely. You've got the Mummers Parade, huge crowds, everyone's exhausted. And for the Philly PD, it's anything but a quiet start to the year.
And then, bang, right after all that, there's this tradition. The police commissioner's reception, day after New Year's Day.
Yeah, it started as a kind of thank you for the higher-ups, captains and above, a formal thing for senior staff. Supposedly a moment of calm after the storm.
Right, so you have this formal hierarchy, this tradition inside, while the officers out on the street have just been dealing with, well, the unpredictable mess of the holiday.
Exactly. And that contrast, that space between the public face of the department and the actual gritty reality for the people wearing the badge.
Yeah.
That's really what we're diving into today.
Yeah, that's the core of it.
We've pulled together a whole stack of sources here. We've got detailed accounts of specific incidents, some insights into how the department was structured, and glimpses into the personal stories, the conversations happening behind the scenes.
They really seem to pull back the curtain on the PPD, showing us not just the rules on paper, but the culture, the actual people, and how events and lives that seem separate are actually, wow, incredibly tangled up.
Sometimes in really surprising ways.
So our mission today is to walk through these details with you. We'll pull out the key insights, the surprising bits, and hopefully help you get a handle on this specific slice of police life and the characters involved.
Yeah, get ready. It's quite a story. Deeper than just the job titles.
Definitely. So let's start with the landscape itself, the PPD. Beyond just the image you might get from something like the Mummers Parade.
Right. The internal reality, it's a mix of different jobs, different units, and a very distinct hierarchy that really shapes careers.
You've got your standard district work first, walking the beat, answering calls, wagon duties.
Which the sources describe pretty bluntly. Hauling prisoners, evidence, sometimes even dealing with really tough situations, like carrying sick people downstairs. That's where Ricky's usually started. Closely watched.
Then there's narcotics.
Ugh.
Plainclothes, undercover work. And this is where the assignments get, well, interesting.
Yeah, the sources point out that putting experienced officers undercover often just doesn't work. Their faces, their mannerisms, maybe just the way they carry themselves. They get known.
So the solution?
Use brand new rookies, straight out of the academy.
Which sounds kind of backwards at first, doesn't it? Putting the least experienced people into these tense undercover situations.
It does. But the sources, they emphasize that the rookies were effective because they hadn't been on the street long enough to pick up those, cop tells or become recognizable faces.
Huh. And did rookies want this job?
Oh, yeah. Apparently, very few turned it down. It had that TV or movie kind of appeal, the excitement.
Right. The glamour, maybe?
Maybe. But the sources are clear. A lot of them didn't last. The pressure, the stuff they saw. Or sometimes they just weren't cut out for it. They ended up back in uniform pretty quick.
Okay. And then there's highway patrol.
Highway. Often seen as the elite unit within the department.
They started on motorcycles, right?
Yep, originally motorcycle patrols. But they evolved into this special unit known for, high-speed chases, tactical stuff, working 2 officers to a car in the really high crime areas. And they had that distinctive uniform set them apart.
But not everyone was a fan.
No, definitely not. The sources mention one newspaper, the Philadelphia Ledger, really went after them, famously called them Carlucci's Commandos.
Wow.
And even, pretty harshly, jackbooted Gestapo, which really shows you the kind of tension there could be between how the public, or at least the press, saw them and their own internal sense of pride.
Yeah, that's some strong language.
Yeah.
What about moving up? Promotions?
Pretty standard path to detective, mostly. Needed about 2 years on the job, pass an exam. But if you were undercover, like in narcotics, and you got burned, your cover blown, you usually went back to uniform. Staying plainclothes long-term was trickier, required a different kind of path.
Okay. And later, another unit comes into play.
Right. The sources talk about the creation of the Special Operations Division, SOD, commanded by a staff inspector, Peter F. Wohl.
And the significant thing there.
Highway Patrol, that supposedly elite unit, was actually put under Special Operations, subordinated to Wohl's command.
Ooh, I bet that went over well.
Well, the sources suggest it caused some, let's say, discomfort, some questioning among the highway guys, yeah.
So this whole structure, these different units and paths, this is where we start seeing specific people, right? The sources introduce some key players.
Exactly. We see 2 rookies who took that weird path, straight from the academy into undercover narcotics. Officer Charles McFadden and Officer Jesus Martinez.
Okay. What were they like?
McFadden apparently was just naturally good at it, adapted really well. The sources say later on he looked like a filthy bum, even grew a beard, really blended in.
And Martinez?
He was paired with McFadden. They called them Mutt and Jeff around the unit. Martinez was apparently skilled at mimicking drug dealers, playing the part.
And their boss in narcotics.
Lieutenant Dave Peacatch. He saw something in them. He actually made them a promise, said if they did good work, he'd try his best to keep them in narcotics, keep them plainclothes.
Which, as you said, was unusual.
Very unusual. Normally, once your face is known, you're back in uniform. That promise, it becomes really important later in their story.
Okay, so that promise connects to something else, a specific event.
Directly.
Yeah.
This is where the threads really start weaving together, like you said. The sources detail the killing of a Captain Dutch Moffat.
Oh, man. How'd that happen?
He was off duty, walked into a diner, right into a robbery in progress. The robber was this guy, Gerald Vincent Gallagher, described as a strung-out junkie.
Did Moffat try to intervene?
Yeah, he identified himself as a cop, tried to talk Gallagher down, but Gallagher just fired his .22 revolver. Hit Moffat once.
And that was it?
That was it. Fatal.
Wow. How did the department react?
Huge impact. I mean, losing any officer is terrible, but Moffat was a captain. He came from a police family. His brother had also been killed on duty, and he was the commanding officer of Highway Patrol.
So for Highway, it must have been.
Personal. The sources describe it exactly like that, a personal affront to every single officer in that unit.
So massive manhunt.
Massive. 8,000 cops across the city searching for Gallagher. Highway Patrol especially was relentless.
And who found him? Don't tell me.
You guessed it. The unlikely pair, those rookie undercover narcs, McFadden and Martinez.
No way. How?
They were actually off duty. McFadden apparently had a hunch, played it out, staked out the Pratt Street terminal.
And they found Gallagher there?
Yep. Led to this dramatic chase along the elevated train tracks. Gallagher slipped, fell onto the third rail,
Yes.
and then was hit by a train. Just a brutal final end to the whole thing.
So McFadden and Martinez are heroes, right?
Yeah.
They got the guy who killed a captain.
They absolutely did. But finding Gallagher had this immediate career-changing downside for them.
How?
Their picture ended up in the newspaper, identified as the officers who found Gallagher.
Ah, so much for undercover work.
Exactly. Instantly burned. Their faces were out there. And this was a huge problem because Lieutenant Peacatch, the guy who made them that promise,
Let me guess, he wasn't there anymore.
promoted and transferred out of narcotics, his replacement, felt zero obligation to honor Peacatch's promise about keeping them plain clothes. They were basically looking at going right back to uniform patrol.
Back to square one. Wagon duties and all that.
Pretty much. But this is where another key figure steps in. Chief Inspector Dennis V. Coughlin.
Okay. And he was.
Described in the sources as maybe the most influential of the chief inspectors at that time, a real power player.
And he got involved with McFadden and Martinez.
Right. Well, the sources suggest Coughlin saw something in McFadden. Described him as a good, hard-working Irish Catholic lad. Looked like he had a solid police career ahead. Coughlin felt maybe a sense of responsibility, that fair was fair regarding Peacatch's promise.
What about Martinez?
Interestingly, the sources say Coughlin didn't feel that same connection with Martinez. Was even vaguely uneasy about him, something about his name being the same as the Son of God. But still, fair was fair.
So what did Coughlin do for them?
He pulled some strings, got them temporary plainclothes assignments first, like an auto burglary detail, just to keep them out of uniform for a bit.
Okay. And then?
Then Mayor Carlucci creates the new Special Operations Division, puts Staff Inspector Wool in charge. Coughlin sees another opening.
And sends them to Wool.
Yep. Sent both McFadden and Martinez over to Special Ops. Figured Wool was smart enough to figure out something useful for them to do there. Keep them plain clothes, fulfill that sense of fairness.
Wow. So much internal maneuvering. And this connects to another officer you mentioned, Matt Payne.
Yes, intricately. The sources weave in Payne's backstory, and it connects directly back to Captain Moffat's death.
How so?
Well, Payne's family situation was a bit unusual. His birth father was a cop who died. His mother later married this wealthy lawyer from the main line, that's the affluent Philly suburbs Brewster C. Payne II.
Okay.
And Matt Payne decided to join the police force after his uncle was killed.
His uncle.
Captain Dutch Moffat was his uncle.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. And Payne wanted to be a Marine, apparently, but couldn't because of an eye issue, so he chose the PPD instead, which went against what his adoptive father wanted, and also against the wishes of his godfather.
Let me guess. Coughlin.
Chief Inspector Dennis V. Coughlin, yep, Matt Payne's godfather.
This is getting complicated, so Coughlin didn't want him on the force.
He preferred law school, like Payne's adoptive dad. But since Matt insisted on being a cop, Coughlin, likely trying to, protect him after the family tragedy, pulled strings again.
To do?
He specifically arranged for Matt to be assigned to Wool's new Special Operations Division. Not as an operator, but as Wool's administrative assistant. Basically, an office job to keep him off the street.
Wow. So Coughlin's really managing careers behind the scenes here.
Yeah.
Based on personal connections, promises, trying to protect his godson.
It really paints a picture of how things actually work, doesn't it? Beyond the official procedures. It wasn't just about rules, it was about relationships, favors, a sense of obligation, maybe even protectionism.
Okay, so we've got these rookies, McFadden and Martinez, now in special ops thanks to Coughlin. We've got Matt Payne, Moffat's nephew and Coughlin's godson, assigned there as an admin assistant for safety. All these paths are converging. Where does it lead?
It leads directly to another major incident detailed in the sources, the Goldblatt robbery.
Goldblatt and Sons credit furniture and appliances on South Street.
Exactly. And the sources give this incredibly detailed, almost minute-by-minute account. It really conveys the control and the fear the robbers imposed.
Break it down for us. What happened on each floor?
Okay, first floor. Hussein El Baruka seems to be in charge there. He hits an employee, Red Monahan, with his pistol, shoots out a light fixture, orders everyone down on the floor, make sure the blinds on the front doors are closed so no one can see in from the street. Total control.
Okay. Second floor.
That was Hector Carlos Estevez. He was shooting too, apparently fired at a clothes dryer, missed twice before hitting the glass. He forced a customer, Mrs. Emily Watkins, and an employee, Ted Sadowski, upstairs, tied Mrs. Watkins up with her own stocking.
Grim details. And the third floor.
Abu Ben Mohammed was up there. He interrupts another employee, Phil Katz, shoots a cigarette stand, then confronts the owner, Mr. Samuel Goldblatt Jr., and his secretary, Mrs. Blanche Steiner, in the executive office.
He was violent, too.
Yeah, the sources say he hit Mr. Goldblatt, shot Mrs. Steiner's typewriter, took their money, hit Goldblatt again, ordered Mrs. Steiner to get her purse, kept asking about a safe.
So eventually everyone ends up on the third floor.
Right. All the employees, plus the one customer, Mrs. Doris Martin, they're all brought up there, tied up with stockings and pantyhose taken from store stock. While this is happening, the robbers are downstairs looting.
Did they get much?
About $480 from the main cashier's drawer. They broke into compartments in the safe, but apparently found no cash there. And then, disturbingly, they set some waste paper inside the safe on fire.
Setting fires.
Yeah.
And then things got even worse.
Tragically, yes. The maintenance supervisor, Mr. John Francis Cohn, arrived for his shift. He came in through the back door off Rodman Street, did some work in the basement, then the second floor.
And he didn't know the robbers were there.
Apparently not. He came back down to the first floor using the freight elevator, and that's when he encountered them.
And they shot him.
They did. He was hit 4 times. The sources even note the calibers: 2.38 special rounds, 2.45 ACP rounds.
Which tells you.
At least 2 different guns were used on him, 2 shooters involved in his death.
Awful. What did the robbers do then?
They talked about braining the place down, ignited some carpet near the back, then they fled out the rear fire door onto Rodman Street.
And opening that door.
Triggered the alarm, the home security alarm, which is what finally brought the police.
Okay. So the alarm goes off, police respond.
Right. Officer Collins gets the call. He does a careful check. Front door is locked, blinds drawn, goes around back to the alley, finds that fire door slightly ajar.
He goes in?
He does. And inside, in the freight elevator, he finds Mr. Cohn's body.
Oh, man. What a discovery.
Yeah, the sources quote his reaction, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph." He immediately radios for backup in a wagon, and that, of course, brings the full weight of the department down on the scene.
So the investigation starts, and they identify suspects?
Quickly. They link the robbery and murder to a group the sources refer to as the Islamic Liberation Army, or ILA.
ILA.
Okay.
And the police plan arrests.
A big operation. Coordinated, planned for the early morning hours to catch them off guard. Chief Inspector Matt Lowenstein, head of the Detective Division, was in overall command. But Wool's Special Operations Division, SOD, was tasked with actually making the arrests.
Voles unit, where McFadden, Martinez, and Matt Payne are assigned.
Exactly. And most of the arrests, 7 out of 8 planned, went off without a hitch. Quietly done.
But one didn't.
One didn't. The planned arrest of Charles David Stevens, who used the alias Abu Ben Mohammed, the guy who was on the 3rd floor at Goldblatt's.
Okay. And what was different about this arrest attempt?
Well, Staff Inspector Wool made a specific and fateful decision. He assigned his administrative assistant, Officer Matt Payne,
The guy Coughlin put there to keep him safe.
that guy. Wool assigned Payne to escort a newspaper reporter, Mickey O'Hara, from the Bulletin during this specific arrest.
A reporter.
O'Hara apparently had a long relationship with the police, covered them a lot, and he was hungry for a story, a front pager. Wool likely agreed to let him observe this arrest. Assigning Payne as his escort seemed maybe like a low-risk way to manage the reporter.
Low risk.
Right.
So what happened at Stevens' house?
Lieutenant Suffern was leading the entry team. It's dark, early morning, snowy alley behind the house. O'Hara gets out of Suffern's car. He's worried about his camera lens fogging up in the cold.
And Payne?
Payne follows him. The sources quote Payne saying later, "My orders were to accompany Mr. O'Hara. He was just doing his job sticking with the reporter."
And then Stevens appears.
Suddenly, just appears in the alley, walking right towards them.
What does he do?
He yells, "Out of my way, motherfucker!" and immediately opens fire with a .45 automatic pistol.
He shoots Payne.
Hits him twice. One bullet grazes his face, causes a cut near his eye. The other hits him in the calf. Payne falls back against a wall.
And he's armed.
He is. He manages to draw his own gun, a .38 special undercover revolver.
The sources even mention the ammo.
Yeah, standard police load at the time. Remington 158 grain round nose lead. Payne, despite being hit, fires back. Multiple shots. Stevens goes down.
Wow. Just like that. What happens right after? Chaos.
Total chaos, it sounds like. Payne struggles to get up, actually steps on the .45 pistol Stevens dropped. And who's right there?
O'Hara. Taking pictures.
Snapping photos. Payne apparently yells, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, fuck you, O'Hara." Just as Lieutenant Suffern and the other cops rush in, they handcuff Stevens, start tending to Payne.
So they got Stevens alive.
Yes. Injured but alive at that point.
And Payne.
Also injured but conscious. They bring a police van. And get this, they put both Payne and Stevens in the same van to go to Frankfurt Hospital.
Seriously, the cop and the guy who just shot him in the same van.
That's what the sources say. Imagine that ride. Then at the hospital, in the ER, a nurse apparently orders the handcuffs taken off the unconscious Stevens. Wool shows up to check on Payne. The doctor, Dr. Hampton, checks Payne out, says the face wound needs stitches, bullets still lodged in his leg.
What a scene. And this shooting, it must have caused huge waves.
Oh, absolutely. Big ripple effects through the department, the city. The sources really detail this.
How did the press cover it? O'Hara got his story, I assume.
He definitely did. Front page in the Bulletin. The coverage highlighted the shooting, but also mentioned Payne's previous shooting, the serial rapist incident, which adds this whole other layer to his public profile now.
And the police brass.
Chief Lowenstein publicly praised Payne, called him courageous. The sources made sure to note that quote.
But then the ILA responded.
Chillingly. They put out a press release called "Stevens a Martyr" and issued a direct threat against the police, something like death to the Zionist oppressors and the murderers who call themselves police.
Whoa. A direct threat of revenge.
Exactly. And that threat obviously led to immediate, significant security upgrades across the department. Everyone was on edge.
What about Payne? He had to give a statement, right?
Yes, his homicide interview. It happened right after he was discharged from the hospital. The sources detail this. Detective Kramer conducted it. Captain Quare and Detective Summers were there. And then Chief Inspectors Coughlin and Lowenstein showed up too.
Both Coughlin and Lowenstein. That shows how seriously they took this.
Absolutely. The sources mentioned Payne was obviously still recovering, maybe a bit sharp in some of his answers. Like when Kramer asked how he knew the pistol he stepped on was Stevens's.
What were the key things he confirmed?
He confirmed Wool's orders about escorting O'Hara, confirmed O'Hara got out of the car first, confirmed Stevens shouted and shot first, and said he didn't initially recognize Stevens in the dark alley, just reacted.
And because of that ILA threat, they put security on him.
Immediately. Round-the-clock protection at his apartment. And guess who gets assigned?
McFadden and Martinez.
Among others, yeah. Officer Lewis, too. Those same guys whose careers got tangled up earlier, now they're guarding Payne. Also, security for Red Monahan, the employee hit at Goldblatt's if he went back to work there. Plus, constant patrols by district, highway, and special ops cars past both locations.
Who was in charge of Payne's detail?
Lieutenant Jack Malone. And the sources mention one night, Malone decided Payne's apartment wasn't secure enough. He moved Payne downstairs into the FOP building for the night.
The Fraternal Order of Police building? That's serious.
It shows the level of concern, and the sources keep revealing these fascinating internal dynamics, these intertwined lives.
Like what else?
Jason Washington, another officer who transferred to Special Ops, he apparently had some unique insights into the gold-black crime scene evidence because of his background.
Okay.
And Washington was also trying to help out a friend, Detective Tony Harris, who was having problems with drinking. Washington actually arranged for Officer Lewis, described as this great big black kid who is mean as hell and goes strictly by the book, to basically babysit Harris all day, keep him sober.
Using departmental resources for personal intervention.
Seems like it. Shows how those relationships and concerns played out in maybe unconventional ways.
What about Wool, Payne's boss?
Wool visited Payne at his apartment. The sources show a bit more of his human side here, worrying about Payne's car getting towed, being mildly annoyed O'Hare was there, maybe even making a joke about Payne being a Casanova.
O'Hare showed up at Payne's apartment, too, while he was under guard.
Yep. He even asks Wool about rumors he might be leaving the PPD for a state job in Harrisburg.
Was he?
Wool denied it. Made a crack about DA Stillwell's political ambitions in the process. It just highlights that constant buzz of internal politics and gossip.
And speaking of politics, the DA got involved publicly.
Oh, yeah. DA Farnsworth Stillwell visited Payne in the hospital, brought his wife Helene. Very much a press opportunity.
Classic politician move.
Seems so. The sources even mention Helene Stillwell's reaction later when she heard about the ILA threat and that she remembered Payne, hinting there might have been some prior social connection or relationship there. Another layer.
It just keeps getting more tangled. Even the feds show up.
The FBI, yeah. The special agent in charge, SAC Davis, sent an agent, Matthews, to talk to Payne, or maybe his bodyguards, and Agent Matthews apparently overheard them talking about auto theft, mentioning someone named Bob Holland.
Connecting this police shooting to a federal auto theft investigation.
It suggests that, yeah. Just shows how one single violent incident, like the Goldblatt robbery and the shooting of Officer Payne, could suddenly, unexpectedly, intersect with completely different criminal investigations happening at the federal level. Everything's connected.
Wow. It's really striking when you lay it all out, how these threads we pulled from the sources, the department structure, the different career paths, the impact of something like the Moffett murder years earlier.
Right, and how that shapes where people like McFadden, Martinez, and Payne end up.
Right.
Then the brutality of the Goldblatt robbery, leading directly to that confrontation in the alley.
And the fallout from that, the threats, the security, the internal politics, the press, it just ripples outwards, affecting so many people, exposing all these tensions and connections within the department.
You really do see that sharp contrast you mentioned earlier between the public story, whether it's harsh newspaper labels like Carlucci's Commandos, or a politician's calculated hospital visit for the cameras.
And the reality on the ground, which is just so much messier, isn't it? Officers facing real danger, the emotional weight of it all, navigating who you know, who owes who, what promises were made.
And just the sheer unpredictability of how people and events collide. It's not neat. It's not linear.
So I guess it leaves you thinking, right? How much of the story of policing that we, the public, actually get to see is, well, how much is deliberately shaped?
Yeah, shaped by choices people in power make. Assigning someone here, making a statement there, using an incident for political leverage.
Versus how much is just the raw, chaotic, unpredictable truth of working the streets, filtered through the actions and experiences of these, complex and sometimes flawed people just trying to navigate it all.
It's a tough question. Where does the constructed narrative end and the messy reality begin? Something to definitely keep thinking about.